Hi, my name's Penny Snowball. Welcome to number 9 in the series of 12 short documentaries entitled In Search of My Mental Health, the Road to Recovery. And this particular section is entitled Who's Mad Anyway? After several conversations and preparation for the documentary, we thought that it would be really quite important to talk about some of the people within the service provision who are, quite frankly, probably madder than the patients, in my opinion anyway. And I just thought it would be quite important to highlight that, because when you feel vulnerable and you go in to see people and they're slightly off the wall or they're not quite getting you, then often, well, for me anyway, I thought that it was me that was the problem. Of course, as we discussed earlier, I'm always the problem. And then sort of months or years later, you turn around and realise that, no, it wasn't me. This person is quite clearly insane. And I've had a couple of experiences with that, and I have to be a bit careful, really. But one of the experiences I had was with a psychiatrist, and thank God I took my domestic abuse outreach worker in there with me, because it was really quite crazy. It was just before I went into the last treatment centre I went into. My social worker came with me, and she tried very hard, but there wasn't kind of the engagement really there. We just didn't really click. And then there was this mad professor of a psychiatrist and my domestic abuse outreach worker. And basically, we were in there for 15 minutes. The woman hadn't read my notes, didn't really, oh yes, what's your name? Hadn't read my notes and couldn't decide whether I was borderline personality disorder, whether I had bipolar, and basically said to me, do you want the drugs? She hadn't read my notes, as I say. She basically just asked me if I wanted drugs, and I said, no, I'd really like to have a bit of a conversation about this before we decide what, if I need drugs, what drug. Maybe I need drugs to calm me down, because I was getting a bit frustrated. Well, I think that's normal under the circumstances. And it was kind of like just the weirdest experience. I'm probably not doing it justice. I did actually do a video about it afterwards with my domestic abuse outreach worker, which I may put up on YouTube later, because it was hilarious. And we came out of there going, she is crazy. And fortunately I had somebody with me, because if I'd have gone in there on my own, I would have come out there feeling 10 times worse than when I went in. And I've had that experience with counsellors as well, and a couple of counsellors and along the way. And it's interesting. I mean, what's your experience, having worked in the field? What's your experience of this?
I think you get some really odd people. Obviously, me and Richard are exceptions.
Of course, but no odder.
No, you can get some really bizarre people who maybe are attracted to the field because it gives them an opportunity to be the expert and to sort of set their agenda. This is how the world should be, this is how you should be. Whereas in actual fact, everybody's journey is unique. And everybody's way of healing is unique, because their history is going to be different. And I mean, I think maybe in any sort of caring profession, you get people who are drawn to it for perhaps the wrong reasons. And I remember a colleague of mine saying once about someone who we were working with who was very mentally ill, and she was saying, I know that he's mentally ill, but also what he's saying is right. And just because he's mentally ill doesn't mean that he's not entitled to his opinion, and it's not essentially sort of correct. It might be a little bit exaggerated, but basically he's got a good perception of reality in this instance. And I think that's sort of valuable, and you have to sort of hold that thought, and whoever you're working with, this is their subjective experience and it needs to be validated, because that's real for them. And it might be sort of slightly slanted, and you might be able to discuss that with them and sort of question it and explore it, but that is somebody's lived experience, and it needs to be treated with respect.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Well, I do agree with that. I think that's you know, as each individual who goes for treatment has their own individuality. Each person that treats has their own individuality. So it's both sides of the coin. But one of the things I do think that goes on today is too many people are treated with drugs. There's not enough questions asked. There's not enough time spent with patients to find out what the reality is. Not enough investigation, and too much eagerness just to go, right, let's give you a drug and off you go and take this.
Saves time.
Also, saves time, and it gets a bigger turnover. Also, the fact that some of these drugs actually cause people to be worse rather than better. Some antidepressants depress people. So why on earth are we giving people drugs that are going to make them feel worse? Even if there's a risk of that, and it's not, you know, some people might feel better, to actually give somebody without knowing whether it's going to make them worse or better a drug, I think is rather short-sighted. And of course, if this is a depressant drug as well, and they suddenly get more depressed, they could go off and kill themselves.
Absolutely.
That's the reality of the situation. And so that, for me, that's a crazy situation. I am a firm believer that the body is the most fantastic machine. It can regenerate every single part of its body, and does several times in a person's lifetime. Although this may sound a bit off the wall and a bit outrageous, but I do strongly believe that we are programmed into thinking that we get old and die. And I believe if we can change that type of thinking, and that's why people are living longer and longer. It's not because of medicine. It's nothing to do with medicine. It's the fact that they believe they can. You know, people are learning that people are living till 85, and they think, oh, I'm going to live till 85, and they do live till 85. So it's not because of medicine. It's because they actually believe that they're better. Because people say, well, people are better today. And because they believe, and we are what we believe, and that is strongly known now. So there's this real thing about, I believe, medication is dumped on people by people who don't know what's really happening. It's used as an excuse or a way of dealing with people, which is because they haven't got time to investigate it properly. And that's frightening to me, especially when you've got people with complex needs, as you were, Penny, at the time you were going to see that person, and she's going, oh, take some drugs.
Yeah, and it's happened recently as well, actually, with the CMHT. It's happened recently. I went to see another psychiatrist. He's been trying to help me. I get to see him once a month or once every... And, you know, the second time we were talking about this diagnosis, what the diagnosis is. And he said, well, would you like some lithium? I said, why would I want lithium? Well, you know, to see, you know, people with personality disorders, they you know, sometimes helps, and we could see and we could balance and, you know, see what, you've got to be joking. This stuff is toxic, poison. You know, and then I went to my doctor and I said, no, well, I said to him, no, thanks. And then I went to my doctor and she gave me some antidepressants, which I did take. But I've noticed my hair's changed, my nails have all broken. Also, I was having a big problem with my kidneys. I had a major operation for kidneys a couple of years ago, and I was getting really thirsty, and it was pulling on my kidneys. So I said, I've got to stop. I just can't possibly take this risk. And also the other thing about it was I was feeling like I was away from the world. And even though I wasn't as distressed and as anxious, I wasn't connected with the world either. So it was just this bubble feeling that I was in. And I just was like, well, so what? I'm going to go away now for like 3 weeks. I won't see you again, and I'll be like a zombie, and then I'll come back. And, you know, I said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm just absolutely not doing it. I personally feel like you say, I need to work through this. My body, my soul is saying that there's some work that needs to be done here. And if I don't feel that, then I won't grow. I said to a friend of mine the other day, I'm on my way to self-actualization, and she was like, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm just like, well, you know, that's what we're supposed to be doing, you know, but how am I supposed to do that if I'm a zombie, you know, munged out on stuff? And someone said to me, "Oh, you know, you don't seem so anxious anymore." This was a while ago, and I'm like, "No, well, I wouldn't, would I really?" You know, it's just like I just don't want to be living like that. I don't want to be living like that. So for me, for me, they don't work. And unless things get seriously wrong, then I want to work through it and feel the feelings and cry and do all the things that I have to do, which I think that's where people don't get that. You know, it is a short.
I think there are occasions such as physical pain and certain situations where, you know, medication is good because it does allow people to get through that stuff. But other than that, I think there's, especially when it comes to mental health, it causes more problems than the.
It's a dangerous shortcut.
Yeah, it can be. Some friends of mine swear by it. They say they just wouldn't be okay without it. But
that sounds like an addict to me.
For me, it doesn't work.